What's going on, Lions fans? Welcome to the Pride of Detroit YouTube channel. My name is Miko, joined once again by my guy Morgan Cannon, and this is your go-to place for all things Lions related. That includes news, updates, analysis, and so much more. And Morgan, we have finally reached the postseason. We officially get playoff football this weekend, starting Saturday afternoon at 4:30 with the Texans versus the Chargers. So in this video, because the Lions don't have to play anybody this week because they got that #1 seed and got the bye, I thought this would be a good opportunity for us to do something that we don't really get to do a lot on this channel, which is basically talk about other teams. And yes, we're still going to talk about the Lions a little bit, but when looking at the playoff landscape, I think there's a lot to kind of glean from some of these matchups. And obviously, depending on certain teams winning and certain teams potentially getting to the Super Bowl, that could have a really big impact on what we think the Lions are able to do again in their first matchup in the playoffs, or even potentially if they make it to the Super Bowl. So first and foremost, man, what are you thinking about, again, all of these teams that have pretty much made it to the playoffs? Is this who you expected, or are there some surprises in there? How you feeling about it?
I think pretty much everyone's expected, minus like two teams that I think that I'm the most shocked by in the wild card round. And also Lions fans, let's make sure we enjoy this, right? Like one seed, only two fan bases, get to experience what we're experiencing this weekend for this year, right?
Yeah.
Detroit and Kansas City. That's it. 2 out of 32. Take a second, breathe it in. You're sitting on top of the perch right now, just watching the others fight it out, and you're going to figure out who has to come into the Lions den next week. Okay. I'm excited about it, man. It's an exciting time. I just wanted to just make sure you're being present in it, right? Yes, we're used to winning now, but also the one seed is tough to attain. So I'm excited. But the two teams that I'm most shocked by that are in the playoffs in the wild, this year, I'm not shocked by the Vikings. I know people are like, oh, it was a rebuilding year. That roster wasn't terrible by any means. You still have an electric offense. So that's not something I'm giving kudos to Minnesota there, if anything, not being a hater. The two that I'm the most surprising to me is Denver and then Washington. I didn't expect Denver to get it on track so quickly. I know Sean Payton's a great coach, but they figured some things out. And then I think a lot of people like Jaden Daniels coming out, but I don't think a lot of people predicted this from the get-go, right, Miko?
No, I would say the same thing for the Broncos, right? To your point, as good of a coach as Sean Payton is, I still think there were a lot of questions on how Bo Nix was going to turn out when they decided to draft him. I think he was pretty clearly seen as the fourth quarterback in that draft class, maybe between him and Penix, right? But it didn't feel like you were going to get someone that was going to be a day one starter, and that's exactly what the Broncos got. And again, being in a division that's very similar when you look at the Lions, the AFC West is represented by three teams. When you look at Kansas City, the Chargers, and Denver. So it's not like they had an easy road to the playoffs by any stretch of the imagination. But that defense played really well. Bo Nix made just enough plays and improved throughout the season. And it's one of the reasons why, when you start to kind of fast forward and look at some of these awards, there's a reason why him and Jaden Daniels are seen as the two guys who are most deserving of winning Offensive Rookie of the Year. But yeah, whether it's Bo Nix or Jaden Daniels, I don't think I expected either of these rookies to hit the ground running the way that they did and to be able to propel their teams into the playoffs in their rookie season.
Yeah, agreed. And it's exciting for Denver. I think they're going to only get better too. However, I do think one team out of those two might have a tough time in the wild card round. And then the other one I think is actually, I'm probably going to pick them to come out in that game, meaning Washington is what I'm getting at. I would say Washington would be coming here, which would be fine by me.
Yeah.
At the same time, I really like Jaden Daniels, but I think that team's I'm not trying to be disrespectful or anything. I just think they're not ready to come beat a Lions team that's had 2 weeks of rest and, in the the literal Lions den, man. I do think I've been to a lot of stadiums. I think Ford Field's quickly become one of the toughest, if not the toughest places to play. So
I think especially when the Lions are winning like this, right? When the fans are all in and they're behind this team the way they are, and we know our impact when it comes down to noise and all of those types of things. No, when looking at the Commanders Bucks matchup, I'm kind of right there with you. I think it's going to be a tough game. Don't get me wrong. Obviously, Tampa's a very veteran team. They've been there before. Todd Bowles is an amazing head coach, and obviously he's going to have that team ready to go. Baker Mayfield has been playing outstanding considering some of the injuries that they've sustained on both the offensive and defensive side of the football. They still found ways to win the NFC South, even if it was, very, very tight between them and Atlanta. But I do think I'm right there with you. Like the Commanders seem like they just have another gear that they can hit when you talk about offensively. This could potentially be a very high scoring game between these two teams, but it would not surprise me in the least bit if the Commanders came out on top, if they just proved to have a little too much firepower. They're also getting healthier on the defensive end. They got Jonathan Allen back just in time for the postseason. I heard that Marshawn Lattimore was like a full participant in practice. So again, you're getting a
Huge.
really good corner on the outside, which is, obviously him and Mike Evans have a lot of history
Must
from their
see
time.
TV.
Yeah, in the NFC South. So I think it has the makings for a very highly contested game, but I kind of see, Jaden Daniels and the Commanders kind of coming out on top in that first game.
Yeah, it's going to be fun to watch. Washington's defense has played better than people think this year. And then Tampa is just banged up, man. You're missing Godwin. You're missing Antoine Winfield Jr. There's just, they had to go to the wire with New Orleans last week. That game, the Saints hadn't really scored points in like a few weeks, man. It was a dire situation. Okay. And then, yeah, Tampa Bay had to go to the wire with them. So I didn't think that boded well for them moving. I was like, Tampa Bay might be a one and done here, just by nature. They're banged up too, man. So are the Lions. Everyone is by this time of the year, but the Bucs are really missing some really key contributors. You know what I mean?
No, completely agree. And I said that was the first game. That's obviously the Sunday night game, so that's my fault for that one.
No, it's okay. It's the first one we wanted to discuss. Y'all know what we're talking about. Yeah.
The first game that we will actually see, though, is Texans-Chargers. And I think if you had told me that this would be a matchup in the preseason, I'd be like, this is going to be must-see TV. You're going to get CJ Stroud. You're going to get, Justin Herbert. You're going to get like just two high-powered offense. And the Texans are kind of limping into the postseason, right? They've dealt with so many different injuries. But I'm still not quite ready to write them off as much as other people are. Like, people seem to feel like this is almost like a bye for the Chargers against the Texans. And I'm not sure that's really the case when you talk about DeMeco Ryans, this defense, and what CJ Stroud is capable of when it comes down to the postseason.
Yeah, I'm not saying there's a zero chance for Houston to come out on top, but I do think it's going to be tough, man. They're just, the offensive line for who's healthy is just playing so bad. It's messing up Stroud's game, obviously. I just don't really see. And the Chargers are a physical football team. Like that's what, Harbaugh has brought his mentality and put his fingerprints all over that team. And that's the way they play. So I think that's going to be a tough matchup. I'm still going to watch. I'm going to watch the entire slate, to be honest, because Wildcard Weekend is one of my favorite weekends in sports. If there's a Pistons game sprinkled in there, then it's perfection almost. You know what I'm saying? Go Pistons. And I think that's going to be a good one. But if I'm betting, I'm going to go Chargers pretty confidently, I feel like.
And I think, like, again, you look at the line that's, they have Chargers by -3. So I think it's going to be closer than people think, whether that's the Texans putting up a better fight than people assume, or maybe just the Chargers, not being able to really figure out a couple things. I think that game is going to be much more highly contested, though. The Saturday night game is a matchup that I think all of America is very, very familiar with. I'm kind of bummed that we have to see it again, in all honesty, but it is one of the best rivalries in football. Ravens with the 3 seed, Steelers with the 6 seed. This one, this is one that a lot of people are assuming is going to be fairly lopsided. I think it has a lot to do with, the last, 4-game losing streak that the Steelers have been on. The Ravens have been kind of riding hot, but I don't know, like 9.5 points being given to the Ravens seems a little overzealous. Like, this is a rivalry. These are two teams that know each other very well. I think it's going to be much closer than that.
I hope so, because I don't know, like Pittsburgh, you talk about limping in the playoffs. Like I saw, had to go to lunch for work today, and on one of the TVs, it was like, is Mike Tomlin on the hot seat? I'm like, what? Is Mike Tomlin on the hot seat? He can't help that Russell Wilson's Russell Wilson. You know what I mean? Like, it's just.
I was going to say, like, yeah, that has no bearing on him that Russell Wilson is deciding to revert back to Denver Broncos Russell Wilson.
Yeah, man. Like, y'all got George Pickens out there just wanting to fight people because he's like, whatever, I can't catch the ball, so you guys are going to get these hands. He's one of he's so funny. Like, when they threw that pick, I knew their season was going off the rails. If y'all don't know what I'm talking about, look it up. George Pickens, like, type in George Pickens funny into Twitter or Google. And they basically, Russell Wilson throws a deep ball. It's nowhere close to Pickens. There's two people back there. He picks it off. and the defender starts running back the other way with it. Pickens just like flying, like tackle, like it starts fighting the receiver. I think it's
I
Terry
was gonna say
McLaurin
like, yeah, I was gonna say, wasn't it
or
the
the
other
DB.
corner? Yeah,
Excuse
like
me.
the
Yeah, I
other
don't know why I said
DB
Terry
that
McLaurin.
didn't even
Yeah.
pick it off. Like it was the other dude. So it's just
Yeah.
like,
Just the guy that was like, he didn't even bother making the tackle, just starts fighting. And I was like, this man is hilarious. But yeah, he's probably frustrated. This is tough. He's a really good player. I like Pickens,
yeah. And I think you look at, again, Lamar Jackson being an
the
MVP
dude.
candidate this year. There is a lot that the Ravens can throw at the Steelers. And I think it's going to be interesting to see what a Derrick Henry type of impact is going to like that he'll have on this game, because obviously these last few seasons is a lot of weight on Lamar Jackson. Can he be the person that uplifts them? Obviously, Zay Flowers is dealing with an injury, so he may or may not play. But I think having Derrick Henry in the backfield is going to really alleviate a lot of pressure, right? You can really start to lean on Derrick Henry in this postseason, try to like really lean on the Steelers defense. And maybe that opens up more opportunities for Lamar in the passing game to where they are able to kind of run away with this. Obviously, the last time they played each other, it was very much that case where the Ravens just flat out throttled the Steelers. But like I said, I just feel like with it being the postseason, with these teams knowing each other so well, I don't, from a coaching standpoint, I feel like Mike Tomlin's going to have his guys ready. From an execution standpoint, yes, like you said, that's going to depend a lot on Russell Wilson. Like, what version of Russell Wilson are you getting on Saturday night? If you're getting, vintage Seattle Seahawks type of Russell Wilson, this is going to be a very competitive game. You get Denver Broncos, Russell Wilson, you might as well, you'll be able to turn that game off fairly early and find something else to do with your evening.
Yeah, I might have to open a book or something on, if you're there. I would take the Ravens with the points. I'm down on Wilson, man. I think it's a tough, my voice still sounds terrible from that game took me out, y'all. But yeah, I would take the Ravens. I just think this is going to be a butt whooping, unfortunately. The least
Yeah.
competitive game.
Well, and honestly, that's the biggest margin of any of the playoff matchups. The second biggest margin is Bills Broncos. And this is another one, and I feel like a broken record at this point. 8.5 to a Broncos team that is very, very good defensively. Like Pat Surtain is up for defensive player of the year. Granted, that's not just because he has been playing well, but obviously it's been a down year for pass rushers. But the Broncos get very creative defensively. And this is one of those types of games where obviously for a lot of people, Josh Allen is the front runner to win MVP based off of the amazing season he's had. And obviously he's made a lot of things work. He's been able to, bring back the interception, still be able to produce a high number of touchdowns, still be able to impact the game in a very good way. But Morgan, I'm not going to lie to you. I'm still worried about Josh Allen reverting to some of his old ways where he just does too much. And so this may not even be a situation where the Broncos are the better team, but if Josh Allen presses a little too much in this game, I could definitely see things kind of go in Denver's favor to where they're able to come out on top in this game.
That'd be a big old upset, man. But yeah, that'd be in my opinion, that'd be the only way I could see Josh Allen or the Bills losing that game is if they had a bunch of turnovers and Denver's defense just went, nuclear. So I think that's going to be a tough matchup. I don't think it'll be, not competitive, but I think Buffalo end up handling business just because he's been so good, man. I don't have the stats off the top here, but he's been amazing. The turnovers are way down, like you said. I think Lamar deserves the MVP, but just because his stats are even better than the other 2 years where he won MVP.
Yeah.
I think just logically, I don't know, he's got to win it again. I just don't think Lamar shouldn't get it because of voter fatigue. You know what I mean?
Voter fatigue, or because Josh Allen had a good season, but it's but clearly Lamar had a better season.
Yeah, statistically everywhere. But yeah, I think good game though. I'm excited for that one. See how Bo Nix looks. I know Sean Payton will have something cooked up, man. He's been there, done that. So it'll be a good game.
And I think that's going to be the thing that's going to be interesting to see, right? Like, how does Sean Payton decide to address and attack, Josh Allen? And I think I heard something on ESPN. They were talking about, the Bills receivers have one of the lowest separation rates in the NFL. So it's it's those little things where it's you have a feisty defense versus guys that don't separate well. That means that Josh Allen has to be on point with a lot of his throws. Again, you have a couple of those that bounce the wrong way. You end up having a couple drives that are killed. And again, I don't think Bo Nix is necessarily going to, go out there and go point for point. But if you give him more bites at the apple than he probably should have, things can potentially go awry for Buffalo.
For sure. I think, yeah, to your point, Denver would definitely have to steal some possessions. I'm talking like 3 turnovers, and then I think that could definitely happen for sure.
And then obviously the team that has the bye week in the AFC, you have the Kansas City Chiefs. They'll face obviously the lowest seed that comes out of here. At this rate, I mean, it's probably looking like the Chargers would be the team that they would probably end up playing. Again, a team that they're very familiar with. Obviously, whenever you have Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, Travis Kelce, Chris Jones in the postseason, they are going to be the heavy favorites to come out of the AFC. Is there any team that is slotted in the playoffs that you feel like has a very good chance, a realistic chance of knocking them off this year?
I'd say Buffalo, just because of Josh Allen. I would say Baltimore because Lamar. Like, they're just two of those players that, like, if Josh Allen puts on like the cape and does what he did against the Lions, they could probably beat anybody because you're gonna have to score 50 points. You're gonna have to figure something. You have to figure something out, man. So I think that, like, those teams. But other than that, Kansas City's just, even though they haven't been, like, we say they're not dominant, right? They finished 15-2, guys. They're the same record as the Lions. So
it's a weird year, right? It's a weird year to be like, man, the Chiefs don't feel like the Chiefs. But I think that's why, for me, like, this could be the year that if the Ravens get things going, right? If they're able to get past the Steelers, and let's say they end up having to play Josh Allen and the Bills next in that situation. I just think, to your point about why Lamar should probably win MVP, I just think there's a little too much going on there, specifically offensively. But now that they've figured things out defensively, that they're playing much more competent football, on the back end, they've always been really good at getting at the quarterback. Like, those types of things, to where you get to Kansas City, and yes, you still have to go to Kansas City, but I think this could be the year where we see Lamar finally break through that glass ceiling that people have been talking about, that he quote unquote needs to break through, even though he's only been in the NFL for 7 years. But like, this could be the year, right? When the Chiefs don't quite look like the Chiefs, you have a truly star-studded offense with Zay Flowers. Rashad Bateman's playing really well.
Mark Andrews
is playing great.
Yeah.
Isaiah Lively's playing really great. Then you add in Derrick Henry to all of this, and plus that offensive line is still really good. Like, the Ravens have the makings to be able to knock off a Chiefs team that, like we both said, like, it's not that they're not good, but they just don't seem as dominant as they've seen in the past.
Yeah, it's more open for sure. I agree with you there, because sometimes you just walk into the playoffs, you're like, all right, well, it's Mahomes, like, most likely. And they still have as good a shot as anyone in the AFC, but it's not as sure thing this year. I agree.
Yeah. So I think, like you said, I think between the Chiefs and the Ravens, I'll give the Bills a slight chance, just because, like you said, if Josh Allen puts on the cape, then maybe they can come out.
Yeah.
But I think any of those 3 teams have a legitimate chance at making it to the Super Bowl. You flip it over to the NFC side. We already talked about, Bucs Commanders, and how the Commanders probably have a good chance of upsetting the Buccaneers. Do you see any other possible upsets in this, in these couple of NFC games between, like, Rams, Vikings, or Eagles, Packers?
The Packers are looking rough here lately, man. Like, I know losing to the Bears cared about that game, and good for them getting that win. You could tell Caleb Williams cared. Excuse me, but I don't know. Like, I don't see them beating Philadelphia. Just outside of Philadelphia laying an egg, which they have done before in the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
It happens to really good teams. It's tough. It's just football. I don't really see. It's almost like a situation where they're like Houston of the NFC. Like, they're just not really playing well. But hopefully, I don't know. We'll see. Maybe Jordan Love really gets it together. And but it's at the Link. It's in Philly. That stadium's going to be loud. 4:30 game, so it'll be dark within 30-40 minutes of the the kickoff. So I'm excited to watch that one, though. I'm going to watch all of them, but that might be one of my favorite ones to watch of the weekend.
Any thoughts on AJ Brown missing practice today? Apparently he suffered a knee injury. Again, early reports are that he's still expected to play. Obviously, I think Jalen Hurts also got upgraded to a full participant. Yeah. So any concerns there with, injuries to either of those guys?
No, not really, because, like, Green Bay, unfortunately, is banged up. Like, you lost Christian Watson. Jair Alexander is not playing. They're also pretty – everyone is this year. Obviously the Lions to a really, really high degree, but everybody's missing players, man. So AJ Brown didn't play. Like, yes, that obviously hurts. He's, him and Devontae Smith are awesome. It's one of my favorite duos in football. But Green Bay is going to have a tough time dealing with Philadelphia on the ground. Like everyone does, because Barkley's awesome and their offensive line's still really good, even without Jason Kelsey. Like Lane Johnson is going to be an all-pro, just probably, hopefully, second team. Don't you
Yeah.
guys mess that up. But yeah, there's Mailata's playing really well. The center, they replaced Kelsey. What's his name? I can't remember it off the top, but playing really like well too. So they haven't really missed a beat. And I think, yeah, at the end of the day, I think they're just going to be too much for Green Bay on the ground.
I was gonna say, I think offensively, like Green Bay's gonna have their hands full. They again might be able to, get a couple stops here and there because Jalen Hurts hasn't played great this year either. So it's not like it's one of those where it's like, hey, I expect Jalen Hurts to kind of be the one leading the charge, but it very much is Saquon. Like if they're going to lean on Saquon in this playoff run, then yeah, like the Eagles are going to have a really good, easy time steamrolling teams offensively. But then
that would be the way they win the Super Bowl, in my opinion. Like if Philadelphia was going to win the Super Bowl, it's because Saquon put on a performance for like the ages, like we're going to tell our kids about in 40 years, type stuff. So go ahead though. My bad.
No, I was also going to say though, like to combine with that of Saquon being able to flex his dominance, you also have this defense that is playing really well, right? Like it's a star-studded defense with a number of high-quality players. They're getting takeaways, they're stopping the run, they're getting after the quarterback. Like they're doing all the things that a couple seasons ago when Philly did get, I think to the playoffs or get to the Super Bowl, like you were like, man, this is a team that's very much capable of winning it. And so that's one of the reasons why I think as much as, obviously the Lions have the number one seed, there is a reason why people are still looking at Philly as like, well, Philly still might be the best team in the NFC when you look at the talent that they have that's available to them on both the offensive and defensive side.
Yeah, it's an interesting conversation just because like like we try to be objective on this channel, guys. So like if you looked at the rosters, as they're currently, with all the injuries and everything factored in, you might say Philadelphia is more talented. And that's not a shot at the Lions. Just the Lions are missing a lot of, like, if you put Hutchinson and McNeil and Carlton Davis and you go on and on, I'm not listing them all, then yeah, the Lions are probably still the more talented team. But Philadelphia, to your point, Miko, you got Darius Slay playing really well. Like, definitely not washed. People were tripping about that. You have Quinion Mitchell on the other side. CJ Gardner-Johnson's making plays. They're a really good football team, and they're complete.
I think the Packers are going to have a really tough time on their hand because even, without Jair Alexander, this was still going to be a tough outing for that defense. But then on top of that, speaking of quarterback play that's not really living up to the hype, like Love's performance hasn't been great either. And so like and he's dealing with an injury as well. So there's a lot of things that could go into play with that one.
Yeah, I like Love. Obviously he's super talented. I'm not being a hater, but he does a lot of things that irk me, man. Like throwing off his back foot when he doesn't need to, like fading away. It's almost like being a jump shooter in basketball. You guys know I love these cross sport analogies and stuff, but why are you fading away? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. You're making it harder. Step into it, rip that thing. Like, you know what I mean? Like he has super, like crazy arm talent. It should be an alarm that there's Packers fans, like they're having like a little infighting here and there because people are like, should we play Malik Willis here this weekend?
And the thing that sucks about that is that Malik's hurt. So it's like you can't even pull that trigger necessarily in this matchup because both quarterbacks are dealing with something.
Yeah, dang. Yeah, they were trying to win that game. I don't think they wanted to go to Philadelphia.
No, why would you?
So they were I think they were Green Packers fans might be like, oh, it didn't matter. Like, no, they wanted to win that game if they could because I don't think
they would have much rather went to Tampa.
That's what I'm saying. You didn't want to go to Philadelphia. That's tough.
No. Other game that we got to talk about: Rams, Vikings. You and I were talking about this a little bit beforehand. Obviously, Dan Campbell said at the end of the Vikings Lions games, like said to Kevin O'Connell, "Hey, see you in 2 weeks." I think Dan might be getting a little ahead of himself because I don't think this is going to be a cakewalk for Minnesota. I think Minnesota is definitely going to come out there, guns blazing, trying to really, prove that they should have, beat the Lions the previous week and that was just a fluke. But this is a Rams team that is, healthier, that are, clearly just won their division, still have all of those offensive weapons. When you talk about Matthew Stafford, Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp, Kyron Williams, the offensive line is starting to play better. And then that young defense, when you look at Jared Verse, when you look at Brendan Fisk and the rest of that defensive line, like they're getting a lot of push. And so I don't know if this is the best matchup for Minnesota when you talk about personnel wise.
Yeah, because their interior like had a tough time against the Lions, man. Like Levi Onwuzurike had 9 pressures per PFF. They were creating some havoc in there. So I do think, and Jared Verse is a heck of a player, man. I think they're gonna move him around. I think he'll be a big factor. This is a coin flip-ish game to me too. Like I don't, I think could go either way. That's probably my favorite game. I'm excited to watch this one though. I don't know like about you.
I was gonna say this is probably the one that I probably have circled, like the one that I'm going to be most excited to sit down and watch.
Yeah, I'm excited. This is going to be a good one. Prayers out to everybody in LA, man. I was just about to say I don't know if they're going to play that game in Los Angeles or how that's going to shake out, but scary stuff. But yeah, I do think Dan was jumping the gun a little bit because I don't know. It's going to be especially if Minnesota has the problems they had against the Lions, because Sean McVay will shove that football up your nose, man. Like, get ready for a heavy dose of Kyron Williams if y'all can't stop the run. Then that's just going to play into Stafford's hands. They're definitely going to heat up Darnold the way, it's a copycat league, man. So you better believe Los Angeles is going to do some cover zero, get in the chest of these receivers or try to heat up Darnold and see if they can't get a takeaway.
And this is the second time that they'll be playing each other this season. They played earlier in the season where the Rams won that game 30-20. Matthew Stafford threw 4 touchdowns, 1 interception. Sam Darnold was sacked 3 times in that game. Matthew Stafford wasn't sacked at all. So that's why I say this one's going to be interesting, because while you and I think the Commanders could come out on top against Tampa, if that's not the case, if Tampa ends up winning that game, the Lions play the winner of this game, and essentially it would be a rematch of of opponents that we've seen earlier this season as well. So again, that's another reason that I'm kind of really going to have an eye on this game, because if the Commanders don't pull it out and we basically have to, we get the winner of this game, it's going to be interesting to see how both of these teams are performing against each other, where, like I said, I think this is going to be a fist fight between these two teams.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure McVay, O'Connell is a part of that McVay coaching tree. So
yeah, I'm pretty sure he is.
Yeah.
So yeah, you get one of those other, that's another thing that ties into this matchup. So again, I'll ask the same question that I asked when it came down to Kansas City, Morgan. Obviously, the Lions have the number 1 seed. They get home field advantage throughout this entire playoffs. I think the Eagles, like we mentioned, the Eagles seem like the most dangerous team. But outside of Philly, do you give any of these other teams a chance if they end up having to come to Detroit in that first matchup that they have, whether it be the Rams, the Vikings, or possibly the Commanders, anybody that you think could possibly knock off the Lions before they can even get to the NFC Championship game?
I would say the Rams and Vikings would have a fighting chance, playing them. Rams would be the second time this season, third time in, 2 seasons. And then, the Vikings would be 3 times in the last couple months. So I think either of those would be, I still think the Lions are the superior team out of those 3 teams. But at the same time, both have game breakers. You got Nakua, you got Justin Jefferson. There's ballers on either of those rosters. And that's the beautiful thing of football. One game, anything could happen. So I would say those 2. And then obviously Philly. Philly would be tough if they end up coming to Ford Field. That'll be, you want to talk about a fist fight. Good Lord. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think that's what you look at the NFC, man. And it looks like, I think you were saying this before. I don't know if you said this when we were recording, before we started recording, that the NFC looks like it's going to be tough. There is no cakewalk to the Super Bowl, right? I think Philly kind of gets one playing the Packers.
Yeah.
But after the Packers, it's not an easy cakewalk for anybody. And even though the Lions have that number 1 seed, outside of possibly drawing the Commanders for their first game, I don't think there's an easy walk to the Super Bowl. So like you were saying earlier, Lions fans really need to savor this experience, savor this playoff run, because I think we're going to learn and see a lot about this team. I can't wait for these games, obviously, as exciting as it is and as great it is that they have the bye and they're able to get healthy. Kind of sucks that we have to wait 2 weeks to see Lions football, but I think this team is going to be so much better for it when we finally see them in 2 weeks.
Yeah, and you go to prideofdetroit.com and you can follow everything that's happening with the coaching carousel, but it gives, Dan Campbell's given them, I think they were in today, so we're recording this Thursday night. I think they had, practice today and meetings, and then I think that he was giving them Friday, Saturday, Sunday off. So that's awesome. And get some days to recharge, and, Ben Johnson and AG and everybody else can get their interviews in without worry. So it's cool. It's a good, enjoy it, guys. This is awesome. This is just a great time to be in the city or do wherever you are and being a part of, Lions fandom. It's
yeah. And again, the Lions get to sit back, watch all of these games, get to, prepare for all of these teams at one time and figure out like, hey, who's going to actually be coming to Detroit. It's going to be electric. I can't wait for this game to be able to finally kick off. You want to call your Super Bowl winner now?
Oh man, I'm gonna go Lions over the Bills. My pick.
I'm going to go Lions over the Ravens.
Love it. Either way, I'd be happy.
As long as
Either way, man.
it's Lions over whoever, could care
Good.
less. But yeah,
Yep.
I think this is the Lions year, and so it's going to be exciting to watch football these next couple weeks. Continue to watch playoff football. Let us know what you guys think in the comment section below about, again, what do you think is going to happen in the playoffs? Are there any matchups that you think are going to be, possibly be upsets, or anything that you're really excited to watch? Like always, if you're looking to keep up with any additional Lions news or updates or anything like that, you can always head over to prideofdetroit.com. If you want to stay locked into any of the video content or any of the live streams that we have going over here on YouTube, all you have to do is hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, and you'll be all set to go from there. But with all that said, I'm Miko. He's Morgan. Thank you guys for taking the time to watch, and we'll catch you guys in the next one.